every single person has been perfectly prepared for who it is that they get to become. And that if you look at where you are in your life right now, whether you're winning or whether you feel like you're losing, whether you feel like you're stuck or whether you feel like you're in flow, you are exactly where you need to be for the person that you're getting to become. You're being qualified. You're being prepared in every moment of every day to become the person that you came here to be. You were created by that incredible force to be something really big and profound in the world. And if all the things that have happened to you in your life never happened, you wouldn't be qualified to step into those shoes. But because you were born, because you're here, because you're living your life, because all of those things happened, you are qualified to be you. And if you can walk into a room and know who you are and know that there's a divinity flowing to you and through you, and that you get to make a choice to be intentional and to perfectly show up in that moment as the highest and the greatest expression of you, not only are you going to live a life of joy, of fulfillment, of freedom, giving back selflessly of yourself every day in every single way, but in addition to that, you're going to be impacting other people, not only through your actions and your behaviors, but through teaching people what does it look like to live a life of power, abundance, freedom, and joy.
Well, Rudi, welcome to Passion Love Pursuit podcast. I'm so happy to connect again because I actually recently met you in person for the first time at Amberly Lago's event in Dallas for her summit. And I just want to acknowledge you because I remember walking into the room and instantly I saw your face and I'm like, oh my gosh, finally get to meet you. And I felt this energy. I felt this really natural, authentic exchange. And I could tell you were really present. You're open to meeting others. And I really want to acknowledge that because I think there are a lot of people that don't give off that type of energy. And I know that didn't always come naturally for you. So I know we're going to get into your story. But I want to know, for the people that possibly struggle walking into a room and feeling confident that they per se belong, which we all belong, I say in air quotes, how does somebody get to the place to feel like they belong in a space they walk into and to feel that confident comfortableness where they become pretty much magnetic to others by just showing up as their true authentic self? What would you say to that?
Well, firstly, Eric, I just want to say thank you so much for having me on your show. Thank you so much for being who you are and how you show up out in the world. And I want to give your audience a little look behind the curtain because when we met at this event and I saw you, my face lit up because I was like, oh my gosh, I finally get to meet you. And when I hugged you hello, I hugged you like I was returning to a long lost friend. And it was, in fact, the first time we'd ever met, but it didn't feel that way to me because I've already seen you online. I've already got so many friends that know you and speak about you that it felt like I'd known you for so long. So even though we were meeting for the first time, it felt very much to me like we had literally just rekindled a friendship from
Right.
years yonder. So your question is really beautiful because it speaks into how I got to where I am today. You know, I never walked into a room feeling like I was good enough. I always walked into every single room, every single space thinking that I was unworthy. And I know what it feels like to challenge who you are and how you show up in any environment and whether people are going to validate you or whether you think that you can do something or be something in that space, or maybe you have to pretend to be somebody to be in that space. And that was where I fell into that bucket of I had to pretend to be to compensate for what I didn't believe I was. And, you know, I'm no longer that person today because I know who I am. And I really want to emphasize that for a moment. You know, I believe in force, and we can call it anything we want. To me, it's God. It could be the universe. It could be someone else that created me in its likeness. And it is flowing to me and it's flowing through me. And by sheer fact that I have been created, I am perfect. There is nothing I need to be. There's nothing I need to do. There's nothing I need to achieve. I just am. And because I am perfect. And so for anyone that's listening, you are created from the same force, the same flow. It's flowing to you and through you. And you are, by design, perfect. And so in every single room, you are perfectly, beautifully prepared to be just you. And if we can remember that, we can shine anywhere. And that's my hope, is that people can walk into a room and just shine.
So beautifully said. And I think there's not one person listening to this that doesn't need to hear that and be reiterated those words, because so often, yeah, we might have this idea, yes, I'm worth it and I deserve to be in this room. And, God created me in the likeness of him, and I'm perfect as I am. I don't need to be anything else. But there are many times that fear creeps in. We have this imposter syndrome and we feel like we're not enough because maybe this person's more successful than us, or more confident, or whatever. So we shrink to something that we don't yet believe we are. And so I would love to hear, because I very much relate to your story when I heard it for the first time. So I want people, and I know people listening are also going to relate to this, but so can you kind of give us a little look back into who did Rudi used to be? And then I would love to go into the unbecoming of that and who you became intentionally after
I
discovering
love
who
your
you truly
I
are.
love your question. I think I'm going to answer your question in three acts. And the first one
Perfect.
was, I grew up in a really small town, very, very affluent, kind of like an Orange County like environment where there's extreme wealth and then there's me. And I grew up in an environment where we had a nice home, we rented it, we didn't have nice cars, we didn't have new clothes. My parents worked multiple jobs. We didn't struggle, but we definitely didn't get cars and boats and motorbikes for birthdays, right? But all my friends did. And I went to a very military style school where the teachers would whip us or cane us or beat us or hit us over the knuckles. And I was often called stupid or labeled stupid. My memory of going into school was a teacher saying, "Hey, you related to your brother? Your brother? Yeah, great. You're stupid, just like him. Go sit on the stupid chair." And I remember having that feeling like, what? I didn't realize I'm stupid. And so I started thinking, well, if I'm stupid and a teacher called me stupid, they must know what stupid looks like. So I must be stupid. So I thought I was stupid. And if you think you're stupid, you begin to act stupid. So I acted like somebody that was stupid. And that translated into not studying, not learning, not doing homework, not really trying to put in any effort. And disappointingly, I never ever showed up in school. I mean, I was present, but I never did the work. And I just passed all my grades. I never went to college. I just never thought any of these things were possible for me. And years later, I had gone into business to, you know, I want to back up for a second because I believe that if you had money, people would respect you. And so at some point in time in my youth, I decided I need to go out and make money. And if I can make money, then I'll get respect. And so when I left school, I went straight into business and I just started creating businesses. But by 26 years old, I had created a tremendous amount of wealth, especially for a 26-year-old. I had the penthouse apartment, I had the sports cars, the life, the businesses. I owned 3 companies, I had 60 employees. I had all these things that should have validated who I was. But I was still that broken little boy sitting on the dunce's chair with the stupid dunce's hat with the word dunce written on front, feeling like he wasn't good enough, he wasn't worthy, he didn't come from money. And so I was a very broken young man. But added to that, I also had terrible relationships. I had terrible friendships. I had all these areas in my life where I realized I didn't have any value in who I was. I went on a journey of, I want to say self discovery, but I think that word is so overused today because what I really did was I started to sit with myself. You asked such a beautiful question in the beginning today because the response was, I know who I am. But I only know who I am because I've sat with myself for hour after hour after hour.
Yeah.
And when you can sit with yourself with your eyes closed, with no outside stimulation, with nobody validating you, giving you anything, and you just sit with you and you process, who are you? How do you feel? What do you want? What are you worthy of having? What have you done that's worthy of stacking evidence of? And you start to really identify, how do you feel and how do you show up in your day and in your life? And so I started to realize that there was tremendous value in me. There was value in my experiences. There was value in who I was and who I wanted to be and what my goals and dreams and desires were. And that's when I started to rewrite the relationship I have with myself. I spent my entire life looking for validation outside of me, from teachers, from girlfriends, from guy friends, from bank accounts, from everything, and nothing validated me. Even when I had all the monetary success, it still did not validate me. So nothing external is going to give it to you. My platform today is Empowered Life. My podcast is The Empowered Life. And we named it Empowered because you could go to a motivational conference and be empowered. An external motivating force can make you feel good. But the reality is you have everything within you to be who it is that you came here to be. So the internal power, in power, is what we're all driving to create, where we don't need the validation from anyone else. So you can walk into a room and be who you want to be and show up how you want to show up. But I think your question is so much more powerful than the story I could share with you, because I met you at Emily Largo's event. And, this was just a few months ago. And I was one of the speakers at this event. And we were speaking alongside some really, really incredible speakers. And I walked into that event on that Saturday very intimidated. I speak, I think this year I've been on 20, I think it's 20 or 21 stages. And so I'm very accustomed to already, yeah. And so in the first 3 months of the year, I'd already been on, I think, 18 or 19 stages. And so let's call it 20 now as we are in June. And so I'm accustomed to being on stage. I'm accustomed to being in big rooms with big people. I work with some companies where my clients are billionaires, multiple of them. And so I work with big people, with big personalities, with big players. But when I walked into Amberly's event, Ben Newman was there. And I was like, oh my gosh, Ben Newman is like a legend. John Gordon's there. I'm like, oh my God, I'm speaking on stage with John freaking Gordon. And so I had that insecurity creep in. And what I didn't realize at the time was I was withdrawing in the room. I went back and reverted to my 6-year-old self in the room. A dear friend of mine, Craig Siegel, was sitting next to me. And, we were just chatting. And then I left the room. I went and got ready, came out, did my thing on stage, left. And then he said to me, let's go grab dinner. And the two of us went off to dinner, and he sat me down. And at dinner, he said to me, what happened to you today? And I was like, what do you mean? And he's like, man, you crushed it on stage, but I'm talking about before stage. What happened there?
Wow.
I was like, what are you talking about? And I'm paraphrasing a long conversation, but he said, man, I watched you try and take up as little space as what you could possibly take up.
Wow.
And it was a beautiful conversation, because he reminded me that trigger still exists. And it's just, how long do we allow that trigger to control us? And in that moment, I was feeling the overwhelming sensation of, man, what am I going to say on stage that these incredible speakers before me haven't already said? How am I going to possibly resonate with an audience where these great minds have already impacted this room? And I was like, wow, this is just so much pressure. And so I actually defaulted to playing small. I share that with you because I know what it feels like to live for 20-something years playing small. I also know what it feels like today to have, an incredible life, an incredible career, to be moving forward, to be powerful, to be impactful, to do what I say I'm going to do when I say I'm going to do it. But I also know what it feels like to forget these small moments where you slip back, and then to be able to slip back into it. It's just, I don't stay in those places very long. So for anybody that's going through that roller coaster, which is everyone, it's okay. It's just, don't allow yourself to stay there.
Oh, goodness. So much to unpack there. But first of all, I want to say, by the way, the one you sat next to was Kelly Siegel. I know Craig Siegel as well, but Kelly Siegel was at that event. But that's okay. I'm just correcting that, because I when you said that, I was like, oh, that's funny, that because we both know both guys. But anyways, what's interesting? First of all, I love your transparency, authenticity, and vulnerability, and what you just shared, because that is exactly true. Is like, we are all human. We will all go back to these old stories we once told ourselves, because it's a pattern that we formed at a very young age. And so fear will always come up. Like you said, though, as you closed off what you just said, was how long do we allow that to keep us where we're at? How long do we keep running that narrative and it stops us in the place, and then we don't do the darn thing? And so that's one thing I want to mention. But also I want to tell you, your talk was absolutely phenomenal. And after listening to you, that was my first time hearing you speak, I was like blown away by how you articulated your words and how you flowed through your talk. It was flawless. And I tend to watch speakers and see how they engage and how they deliver a talk. And, a talk sometimes is a conversation. It's not like always trying to remember your words you're trying to deliver, but you were flawless. And I felt you knew what you were talking about. You convinced me that you know what you're talking about. And that's really how somebody receives what is delivered by a speaker, is when they believe that you believe what you're sharing. So anyways, I just wanted to acknowledge you because it was phenomenal and you really touched me and I took notes and all the things. But
I
also I
appreciate
want to
that so
unpack.
much.
So yeah, of course. So I also want to unpack this idea of the stories we tell ourselves. And we all have this narrative that runs somewhat on, subconsciously we run this narrative over and over, the story that I'm not good enough and I need somebody else to validate me to feel like I'm enough. And I tremendously relate to your story. I feel like you're mirroring my conversation that I share a lot because I exactly went through the same experience and I felt like I needed this external validation to tell me I was enough, that I belonged. And I would always shape shift into something I thought I should be to fit in. And then luckily, through my own personal transformation, I was able to shift out of that and really notice and take inventory of who I truly was and rediscover myself through the process, as you mentioned. So, circling back, you started off saying that you took time to get to know yourself. And I think that's the key piece on really intentionally creating and living a life that you love with purpose and with passion, is really getting to the foundational place of getting to know yourself, asking yourself, what do I value? What makes me come alive? What lights me up? What doesn't feel in alignment? What doesn't feel good? And getting to know yourself in those quiet spaces, because if you don't know that, everybody else isn't going to tell you who you are. And so I think that's really the foundational piece. And with that, I want to unpack identity, because I believe identity is literally the most powerful force that will lead us either where we want to go or bring us back to where we have been running our whole life in. And so, what can you say about identity and how can we start to then transform our identity in who we are wishing to become?
If someone listening to this has struggled with their weight, as an example, and they've done every kind of diet they could possibly imagine, and they might lose 10 or 20 or even 30 pounds, but then they gain it back, and then they gain back a little more, and they yo-yo up and down, up and down. But if they look at the average of who they've been overweight more than they've been anything else, and then they really struggle. They constantly have this handcuff to the bad choices that they're making. Maybe it's the Coca-Cola, maybe it's the bag of potato chips, and this is where they live. And when I say this is where they live, I'm referring to the identity. And so someone that struggles with their weight and cannot lose the weight, they identify as a person that is unhealthy, or they identify as a person that is overweight. I heard an interview where a gentleman was supporting Oprah Winfrey when she was going through her weight loss cycle, which we've all witnessed if we followed Oprah Winfrey's career. And it was before all of these injections started to hit the market. And she had lost a considerable amount of weight, and she lost the weight and kept the weight off. And the gentleman was interviewed, and they said, what did you do that was so different that everybody else hasn't been able to support Oprah in to have this weight loss? And he said, I just got her to stop seeing herself as a big person. And when he unpacked that, he was referring to when you look at yourself in the mirror and all you see is the person you used to be, you're anchoring yourself in the identity of that person, and you're going to make choices that are then congruent with that person. So you're going to continue to be the same. If your identity is that you're not good enough, you're anchoring yourself in I'm not good enough. If your identity is in I have to shape shift to fit into every space, then you're going to constantly not validate your intuition, who you are, how you feel, what you should be doing. You're looking for other people to tell you what you should or you shouldn't be doing. And so you're making those choices, and those aren't any of your choices. I want to take your question. I want to explain it slightly differently. Human behavior is, a topic that I just absolutely love. I'm constantly a student of human behavior. Everything that we do is based on the formula of we have a thought, the thought produces an emotion, the thoughts and the emotion together drive all of our behavior. And so if we think about that for a second, if you look in the mirror and you see a person that is, in my case, really skinny, struggles to put on weight, struggles to put on muscle, right? I can look in the mirror, which I did for more than 20 years, and say, I can't build muscle. Well, that's not true. but I'm making a statement, I cannot build muscle. And every time I say it, I'm validating it. So when I get out of the shower and I'm toweling off and I see my body in the mirror, or I see a photograph of me in a bathing suit, I look at myself and immediately I'm like, well, there it is. There's the evidence. I can't build muscle. And that's what I would say repeatedly. My wife one day said to me after about 5 or 6 years of marriage, she says, babe, I love you. But if you ever say again, I can't build muscle, I'm going to hit the roof. Like, enough already, because you are forecasting a future potential that may not even be true. And knowing what I know, it was surprising that I was playing this narrative over and over and over and over in my head. So here's the miracle in that. I decided to say, what if I could grow muscle? What if I could grow muscle easily? What if all these years I've just been saying I couldn't, but I really could? And what's so amazing is when I started to track my health journey, I was able to pick up 5 pounds of muscle in 2 weeks. I was able to drop body fat. I dropped 4% body fat in 3 weeks. My gym instructor said to me, like, what's it like being so awesome? He's like, I've never seen results like this. This is amazing. And he was just so excited. And the only thing that changed was I upped my protein intake, which we all know is very necessary. But I'd done that in the past with no results. And now when I look in the mirror, I don't see the skinny little guy. I'm seeing the guy with the muscle. I'm seeing the guy with the toned body. I'm seeing the future version of who I want to be. And then I'm making decisions from that vantage point as I move forward in my day. So that supports me in doing the necessary work. I was already working out. I was already drinking protein shakes. I was already doing the right things, but I wasn't seeing the results. The reverse is going to be true. If you identify as somebody that's not good enough or that's not worthy, you're actually going to chemically induce your body with the emotions of unworthiness, which is going to then incite the fear, fight, or flight reactors. So you're going to have stress coursing through your veins. You're going to shut down the left and the right brain. You're going to lose inspiration, intuition, creativity, logic, reason. You're going to lose your ability to be creative, which is what you were put on this earth to do. And then in that moment, you're stuck. And so when somebody comes and asks you a question, your brain's going to answer from the part of your brain that says you're not good enough, you're not worthy, and you should bypass whatever the opportunity is in front of you. And so you're going to continue to stay in that state where you make the same mistakes again and again and again. And so to change your identity, the answer is really simple. We just have to change how we feel. And if we can change how we feel, it's going to chemically alter everything. The formula is thoughts produce feelings, thoughts and feelings drive all human behavior. And so we're always trying to change behavior. And all we have to do is change either the thought or the feeling. And the feeling's the easiest.
So good. And I think if people rewind that and hear that again with intention, like really listen to what you just said, this is the key to really transforming your life. This is my belief, but I'm not the only one that believes this. Because as you mentioned, Oprah, in the identity she shifted is when she had the lasting results and transformation. And that's why diets don't last, because a lot of people haven't addressed the reason why they've gained weight or why they keep on weight. And that's why a lot of people return to the same size they once were, even after a diet, after losing 50 pounds, is because they never addressed the identity and who they see themselves being. So I think that's the most powerful thing, one of the most powerful things to address. But you also talk about something called priming. And so I'd love to get into the process you walk people through and how this could be really helpful in creating a very intentional, purposeful life.
So I teach a process called priming. And I want people to know that every single person on the planet, whether they've ever heard of me, they've ever taken a program, read a book I've written, anything I've ever done, you're priming regardless. It's just the process I'm teaching is a very specific process to drive a very specific result or behavior. But we're all priming. So priming is the process of when you wake up in the morning, the brain is preparing for who do you want to be today. And if you can understand that you have the power or the potential to manipulate how your brain is going to start today, how is it going to fire up? What is it going to look for? What are going to be the instructions? And you need a little bit of information to understand the process. To do this in a podcast interview is so hard because there's so much information. And to put it in a short amount of time, I'm going to simplify it by saying in the very first 20 minutes of the day, the human brain is the most susceptible to change and influence. So the brain wakes up completely calm, completely neutral. You are calm, you are neutral. And then as the brain starts to wake up, it starts to look around you. It sees your bedside table, sees your cell phone, sees your email inbox, your bank account, your partner, the lack of your partner. It sees your reflection in the mirror, and it starts to say, got it. I remember who we were yesterday. And the minute the brain remembers who you were, that's a very important distinction, who you were, it then puts the same chemicals into the body based on how you were feeling yesterday. Because you're going to have thoughts based on yesterday. To everyone listening to this, what did you do this morning when you woke up? If you grabbed your cell phone, lay in bed, and the first thing you did was open up your cell phone, turned off your alarm, went onto Instagram, went into your email inbox, read an email from your boss, now you're pissed off, now you're frustrated, now you're judging, resentful, all these emotions start to come in. You're opening up your unconscious mind to all of the stimulation, and you are not controlling where you're going to go emotionally, what's going to trigger you. So as an example, if you opened up your phone this morning and the first thing you read was an article in the news about the latest forest fire and how many million hectares of trees have been burnt down, and you're an environmentalist and you immediately are passionate about, this is crazy, this is so catastrophic, I can't believe this. You're feeling emotions of fear and of anger and all of this that's coming up. Your body is now learning this is how we want to be today. And in the first 20 minutes, how you choose to feel in those first 20 minutes, your brain is going to set a dominant state. So it's actually going to say, we are going to feel that emotion all day. So we might go up or we might go down based on what happens in our day, but we're going to go back to that state. And we're going to live in that state the most throughout the day. Most people don't know this. So when they wake up, they go to their email and they start scanning, is there anything important that's happening at work? And then they see somebody didn't do something and now they're annoyed, they're frustrated. Boom, brain says, got it. We're going to be Rudi today and we're going to be frustrated and resentful and angry. And then that's our dominant state and we move forward. So many people are in relationships and they live with a partner, share a bed with them, wake up in the morning, they're feeling the emotions from their partner, they're feeling the emotions from themselves, from their past, from their family, and they get so accustomed to what it feels like to be in that environment that that's where they think they live. That's who they think they are. But when you can wake up and clear your mind, clear your emotional state, go somewhere very intentionally in your home, sit down with yourself, and then decide to release any stress that's built up as you start your day, as your brain starts to turn on, and then quiet your mind through a process of breathing in and breathing out, and then forecast a dream. I use the word fantasize. Every adult has had a sexual fantasy at some point. And a sexual fantasy is where you imagine something in your mind with such clarity that your body physically alters itself to match the reality as if it was happening. So if anyone's ever had a fantasy, you know blood starts to pump, your palms get sweaty, your heart accelerates, but nothing external is happening. But internally, your body is reacting like, wow, this is really going down. But it's not. It's just in your mind. If in the first 20 minutes of the day, you could create a fantasy, but what if your fantasy was about writing a book and your book being picked up by Oprah? What if it was about you running for a local position and being elected? What if it was for you being an actor and getting a standing ovation, or doing a keynote, or being promoted, or having love, playing with a cuddly puppy? And you could create that feeling in the very beginning of your day. And so if you hold a cuddly puppy, assuming you love puppies, and you feel the puppy and you smell the puppy breath, and your body reacts as if that puppy is literally in your arms, but it's not, and you feel the love, the joy, the fulfillment, the exhilaration of holding this beautiful cuddly puppy, and then you do that for 20 minutes, your brain is going to set the dominant state of love and joy, fulfillment, and freedom. So now when you open your eyes, you've literally forecast that emotional state. And now when you move forward in your day, you're going to draw and align experiences to you that match that. So let's take this back one more step. You are an energetic being. Every single thing in your body is made up of one thing, and that is an atom. Everything that is around you is comprised of exactly the same things, atoms. And all of these atoms are purely just molecules that move. And the number of frequencies, the number of molecules, how fast they vibrate is what makes up physical matter. And so if we can hold a thought or a feeling around something, when you wake up and say, I am strong, and that's the first thing you say, I am strong, I am healthy, your body will start to vibrate strong. Your body will vibrate healthy. If you are unhealthy and you wake up and say, I am healthy, you are chemically instructing every cell in your body to vibrate to that frequency. And if you just kept doing that, your body would begin to move in that direction and you would become perfect health. But you have overriding thoughts that say you're not. So
Right.
the truth is, if you wake up every day and hold the feeling, hold the intent, hold the vision, the fantasy of the emotion of what you want. Now, notice I'm saying the fantasy emotion. I want people to go to the end result. If I said, Erica, what is your greatest vision? What do you want for your life? And you said, oh, my goal is to, be interviewed by Oprah Winfrey. Then I would say,
Yes.
great. What if you imagine the feeling in the beginning of the day of being interviewed by Oprah? Would your mind maybe say, Erica, Oprah doesn't know who you are? Is that a possibility? Well, it would be, yeah, because you'd be like, well, she doesn't know me now. This is where I am. I'm not there yet. But what if I said to you, Erica, could you hold a fantasy of you being on Oprah? But I don't want to know about that. I want to know when you leave Oprah, when you get into the town car and you're driving down her winding driveway under the oaks and you're leaving and you pick up your phone and you phone someone and you're like, you will never believe how amazing my day was. And you share that. Well, now your brain's already experienced the Oprah moment. And so now you're past the Oprah moment. You're now in the bliss of the aftermath. If you could anchor that feeling, you felt the end result of it. So if you do that for the first 20 minutes of the day, you're not going to meet Oprah that day. You're not going to be on the Oprah show that day, but you're going to draw experiences that align with the same feeling as that for the rest of your day. I want to, and I know my answer is really long, and I promise you I'm trying to keep this very succinct, but I want people to imagine it this way. Every morning when you wake up, you are climbing into an elevator. And as you get into this elevator, you get to decide, is my elevator going to go up or is it going to go down? Every single floor that this elevator stops on looks exactly the same, but the energy frequency is different on every single floor. And so if you get into this elevator and you go to an email inbox and it's despair and frustration, resent and anger, or you look at the lack of love and you go to, I'm not good enough and I'm not worthy, your door of your elevator is going to open up. Your bedroom's going to look the same. Your life's going to look the same. Your job, your car, your everything. But you're going to be living in an environment that energetically aligns with, from that vantage point, of those emotions. But if you were to get back into that elevator, go into your mind, prime your mind through the releasing of negative emotion, creating a neutral state, then forecasting a goal, a dream, a vision, and you connect to it. You feel what it would feel like to have that. You're going to be opening up that door. Your room will look the same, but you're on a new frequency. Your physical energy is going to align with that new frequency. So when you leave, it starts looking the same, but everything will be different because you'll be drawing and magnetically aligning with everything that is meeting the new version of who it is that you come to be.
Oh, Rudi, I love that so much. And I think anybody listening, you could really start to implement this into your days and notice the difference. And I think this goes to also the becoming a new version of ourselves and attracting something that we desire to attract, but we yet to have. And that goes to like relationships or finding love. It's like we tend to mirror the love we have for ourselves. And when we start really embodying a new way of being and we're operating in this, like, I feel I'm worthy, I respect myself, and I hold healthy boundaries. And when you start embodying that, that energy will be matched. And so that's why I love everything you just walked us through, is really something people could start to implement into their days. I know I need to do it too. I'm one of those people. Unfortunately, I use my phone for my alarm still. And after having this conversation, I'm like, okay, finally, I'm going to get an alarm because I don't want my phone near me anymore. And so after we get off this interview, I'm going to go order myself an alarm because it's packed away somewhere when we move. So, but I love what you just walked us through, because it's really a tangible thing that we could start to implement to really start to notice, the whole conversation of being intentional with our time, our days, and our energy. And so talking about that, because I love talking about intentionality and having passion and being purposeful in our life, in all areas of our life. And I think a lot of people, have this question like, what is my purpose? I don't know what it is. Maybe they just recently got divorced, so they don't even know who they are anymore, or their kids went off to college and they're questioning like, what am I now? I thought I was a mom, but my kids aren't here anymore. And so what would you recommend for somebody that's really trying to shift into living more intentionally and purposeful in their life? What should they start doing or possibly thinking about to start really changing into being more intentional and purposeful and living the life that they love, that's not attached to something else, if you want to say?
Man, your questions are so good. And I'm trying to think of how to give this in the shortest amount of time possible, because
I know they're like episodes in each question.
they really should be. The question that I think is going to be on everybody now that you've asked that, because there were three questions in that really. But if I were going to summarize, I would say, if you don't know who you are, then you don't know who you're meant to be in any situation. And you're asking about, how do we live intentionally? How do we have an intentional life? Well, intention means to have an intent. The majority of people, and my estimates are 98% of people on the planet, they do not live an intentional life. They are reactionary. They walk into a room and they react. They go to work and they react. They open the email inbox, they react. They turn the alarm off, they react. If somebody phones them, they answer the phone, they react. There isn't a thing in the world that I do where I am not intentional. There are moments maybe where I slip or I forget, but they are very few and far between. When Kelly Siegel called me out at that event and said to me, like, hey, brother, what happened to you? You seemed like you really try to take up as little space as possible today. You should be taking up all the space in the room. Like, in that moment, it was a quick trigger reminder. And I was like, wow, how did that happen? And then I realized, oh, I hadn't set an intent in that moment. And then I get back to setting that intention again. If my phone rings and if you randomly called me, and test me one day, you randomly phone me and I answer the call. If I'm not expecting the call, I'm going to say, hey, how are you? The minute I hear what you need from me, I'm going to say, could you give me a minute? And I'm going to put you on hold. And I'm going to ask, what do I want now? Because now I know what you want. What do I want? And it's not what do I want from you. What do I want to do in this moment next? So if you were to call me and all of a sudden you're upset and you're frantic and you need some support with something, I'm going to now pick up your nervousness, your anxiousness, your frantic energy, your anxiety, maybe your frustration. And so now I'm going to react or respond in that tone. But if I pause for a moment and say, who do I want to be now? I want to be a supportive friend. I want to be loving. I want to be compassionate. I want to be kind. And I want to, create impact. Okay, so that's who I want to be. What do I need to do to be that person? So I create separation between myself and my emotions. I take a moment to think of my thoughts. What's the best answer I can give to what I just learned? I collect myself and I say, my end result is, I want at the end of this call, Erica, to say, oh my gosh, that is exactly what I needed to hear. Oh my God, thank you, thank you, thank you. It doesn't matter what's going to come out of my mouth now. I am in alignment with the end result of what I want to create. Now, when I go into that conversation, I'm better prepared to meet that end result. Most people don't create the space. Most people don't create the time. And it's the same formula. It's taking literally 10 seconds, 20 seconds to sit with myself. Same exercise that I did when I was 26 years old and I had to learn to sit with myself. Who's Rudi? What does he want with his life? So if somebody's sitting there and they don't know who they are, they don't know what they want, they've lost their identity a little bit, they're wanting to create a shift or a change, you need to take a pause and say, everything else that's happened in my life, I have been reacting as a default to everything. But who do I want to be? How do I want to feel? And then what are things that I could do that could lend itself to getting me in that direction, to making me feel closer to the way that I want to feel? So what are those things that I could start to do? And then start pouring into yourself to be able to do them. But we need to know who we are. Most of us are just picking up outside emotion. I tell this story so often. My wife went to go and visit a family member, and they were living in a small home, a 2-bedroom home with a kid in the room. Husband and wife were in the room, and my wife was on the couch. And the husband got up and said, and woke my wife in the middle of the night and said, man, I cannot sleep. Could you do me a favor and just go and get into the bed with my wife, because I can't sleep and I just need to sit in the living room and watch TV. So my wife grabbed a pillow and in the middle of the night, walked off and got into bed with her family member and fell asleep. And while she got into the bed to fall asleep, she started to notice her heart was accelerating. She started feeling anxiety. She started feeling stress. And then all of a sudden she thought, oh my gosh, I think I'm going to get sick. And then she was lying in bed having this feeling of nausea and anxiety and stress. And then it dawned on her, oh my gosh, this was his emotion. She just got up from the couch, walked into the bed, lay down next to her family member in the bed where this man had been lying, who was suffering stress, fear, anxiety, having a panic attack. And then she got into his energy. Most people wouldn't have the ability to distinguish, oh, that wasn't mine. They would just start identifying with, oh, I have anxiety now. I'm having a panic attack. I'm starting to stress. When you walk into a room, you're picking up the energy of every single person in that room. If you don't know who you are before you walk in that room, you're going to draw in their energy and think it's your own. I can walk into a company and stand in the foyer of a company. I literally did this a few months ago in the foyer of a 30,000 person company. CEO says to me, what's the energy of my business, Rudi? And I said, give me a minute. And I just stood in the lobby. They had 5 or 6 reception people, like checking people in and people walking in and out and people talking hello and coffee. And then I turned around and I said, there is a tremendous amount of fear in your business. Fear. Wow. The emotion I'm picking up is fear. People are really scared and there's overwhelm. And they looked at me with these eyes like this. We then go back into a conference room. I do a presentation for them. Afterwards, the CEO says to me, do you know what we didn't share with you is like, we just had our greatest record-breaking year. We've never achieved the results we've achieved before. And everybody's really worried we won't be able to do it again. The expectation is so high now. We've gone from we're so awesome to what if we can't do it again? And the emotion was fear. And so we could train and support the teams to overcome the fear. Now, the reason I use that story is there's information in energy. There's information in every room. But if you don't know how you feel, then you're never going to know the information's there. What if I did not stand in that lobby that day? What if that company spent the next 12 months in fear? They wouldn't have driven the results that they're going to drive. They wouldn't have continued the success. They would have then created more stress, more fear, and they would then be perpetuating that because they'd be living in a state of fear. But if we can identify that the emotion around us is not ours, emotion isn't even real. Emotion is just an indicator of information. You have the thought, the brain takes the thought and says, we need to put this into a chemical to tell the body how to react or respond. And so that is the emotion. So the emotion is dumped into the body, the truly just the interpretation of information. And now it's changing the physiological state around you, which upstates your energy, which is 15 feet around you. And now you walk around with that. So if you're anxious or nervous, people are going to walk into your energy and feel the anxiousness and the nervousness, but they're not going to know it's you. They're just going to feel it. But if they don't know who they are, now they're going to react to it. And so that's what we get back to. If you're not intentional, you're going to start to be nervous or anxious or excited or in love or whatever the emotion, but not know where it's coming from unless you first know who you are.
Oh, that's so good. It's so good. When you walked us through that all, it made me really understand how, like, I've been in that situation as well. Like, I'm very affected by the energy in my environment as well. And I just was at a conference and Gabby Bernstein was speaking and she walked in, she had a talk prepared and she was probably maybe 2 minutes into the talk. And she said, hold on, I'm going to stop right here. She put her talk aside and she's like, I feel a misalignment with the energy in the room. So she had us go through like this couple minute process where everybody closed their eyes and really checked in and became present in the room. And she shifted her whole talk and she felt like connected to the audience by just doing this simple exercise where people could tap into the present moment because people are here, there, or distracted. And it changed the whole talk. Number one, she didn't even talk about what she prepared for that day, for that event. And that kind of reminds me of what you're talking about. And also the intentionality of when you are intentional in how you're going to show up, you're going to then influence the room. And that's exactly when I walked in Amber Lee at Lago's event, saw you, your energy fed me, and it shifted my energy as well. So it's kind of like we bounce off each other. And so if you're wanting, which I assume a lot of us are, we're wanting to live a life where we're showing up as our best self, well, we have to be intentional about that because, as you said, fear will always creep in if we are not intentional. So I love what you shared. And I think that just asking ourselves that question as we walk into our days, like, what is my intention? How do I want to pick up a call? How do I want to enter my job or career? How do I want to conduct an interview? Night and day difference when you just ask yourself that question. So thank you for sharing that. The other thing I wanted to know is, where was I going to go? I had a question off of this. Oh, I love that you talk about joy and fulfillment. I think we all need a little bit more joy in our life. I think we run on kind of the hamster wheel of the things we need to do, and we forget to schedule in joy. So I would love to hear what you have to say about joy and fulfillment, and how do you make sure to add that into your life? I know before we press record, your kids are on summer break, and so you're very intentional in your year, in your block of time of 2 months when they're home, not at school. You're scheduling in joy. That's pretty much what you said before we press record. So can you share with those listening, how can we schedule more joy and fulfillment into our lives?
The cornerstone of my company, and when I say my company, my wife and I founded the Empowered Life. And when we sat down, we wanted to know what was our foundation. And the 4 cornerstones, meaning the tables under the leg that was going to hold up everything, was going to be power. And the second word was abundance. The third word was freedom. And the fourth is joy. So power, abundance, freedom, and joy. And when I say power, I don't mean power over someone. I don't mean dominion. I mean the internal power to achieve our highest and our greatest potential. And then to be abundant, because the world is abundant. You get to be abundant in health and wealth and in freedom and in time, because you can have all these things but not have time to do it or not have health to do it, then it doesn't mean anything. So we want to be abundant in all things good. And then obviously freedom to me is really important, to be able to do what I want, when I want, how I want. And these cornerstones are not to say what I'm looking for. It's what we should be looking for as people, as in humanity. But it needs to be grounded in joy. And if you're not doing in all those things in joy, then you're not doing them, and you're not doing them for the right reasons. And I don't think that you're going to achieve the highest potential. You also set the stage beautifully that, yes, prior to our call, I was sharing with you that I've got my kids with me, and so we're very intentional in spending some time with them. And so I've intentionally pulled back from some of my commitments so that I'm home a little more because they're on summer break. But, if I only did that twice a year, meaning the 2 months that I slow my calendar down to be present, then what about the rest of the year? Then I've got 10 months of not living in joy. And so joy is something that I create every day. I believe that we all get to be joyful and we all get to live a life of fulfillment. If we really ask, what does everyone want? We want joy and fulfillment. Everything else is just bringing us to joy and fulfillment, those 2 words. And I believe that your greatest levels of joy and fulfillment only ever come when you give selflessly of yourself every day in every single way. I wake up every single day, and my goal is not to make $1,000 today. It's not to make $1 million. It's not to go and get booked on another speaking event. It's only to create impact. All I think about every single day when I wake up is, how can I create impact? Who can I impact? Who am I going to be impacting today? On the screen of my phone is an image of a stadium of 85,000 people. That is my goal. And I want to be on stage in front of 85,000 people 40 weeks a year. And I want to do it until I'm 103 years old. And so it's not about me selling 85,000 tickets. It's about 85,000 lives, 40 weeks a year, every single year until I'm 103. So it's always anchored in the impact. When I go into my mind every day and I release the emotion in the process of releasing stress, and I forecast the vision, the goal, I go into my mind and I create me 103 years old, not on stage, afterwards. When I'm leaving, I'm talking to my kids, I'm talking to my wife, we're high-fiving, we're saying thank you to the sound engineers, we're looking at the photographs and the video footage of everyone crying, the breakthroughs, the moments. I want to feel invigorated and excited. So I'm connecting to the feeling of the giving back. I then also in that moment go into my mind and I reflect back on anyone that I've had in my life over the last few days What are some of the love letters I've received? And I'm going to clarify that in a second. But what are some of the love letters I've received? What are the things people have said, the gratitudes, the appreciations, the conversations I've had, the breakthroughs I've supported people in? And I anchor that. That's how I start my day. And then when I go to bed at night, I don't lie in bed, and I'm sure you're the same. When you went to bed last night, did you think about how much money you made? Did you I nailed that day, man. I made this much. Like, we don't think about those things. We don't even go into our bank accounts at bedtime. But I go into every single person's face that I saw that day. So when I start my day, I prime for my future goal, and then I go into my calendar, not on my phone, in my mind. And I already know what I have the next day, because before I close out my workday, I look at what's coming up the day following. So when I woke up, I already knew at this time I'm going to be on your podcast. And so I create the end result of the emotion of what it will feel like to hang up from this, and for you just to say, wow, that was amazing. I'm so grateful for the breakthroughs, for the messages, for the people that listen to it, that send me a DM and say, oh, Rudi, I just love you. I'm so grateful. You've just reminded me of my brilliance. I'm just going to take over the world, and I'm so excited. And I'm so empowered. And then I read these letters. They're fictitious, but I read them. But then I'm aligning with the end result of receiving them. Last night I went to bed with tears in my eyes, and this sounds so cheesy. When I hear people say this, I always wonder, did they really, really? I had a date night with my wife last night. We went out with some dear friends of ours, and it was a rare occasion. My wife and I rarely go out. We love to be homebodies, and we went out for dinner. And then when we came back, we tucked our kids into bed, and I told my daughter, she's 9 years old, that I'm going to do a sleepover in her room. So I pulled out a mattress and a tundrel next to her, and we held hands together. She's in her bed, I'm on the floor on a mattress, and we're reading. And then it's time to turn the lights out. And then as I was drifting off to sleep, I read a text message in my mind that I'd got earlier that day. I was on somebody else's show doing an interview, and the person that was the videographer that was set to do the editing of this podcast sent me a private message. And she said, I'm sitting here editing this in tears. She's like, you have touched me in my heart, and wrote me a whole message of what she gained from that interview. And when I lay there thinking about that, and that lady in that moment, having that breakthrough, having that realization, what happened, the tears, it brought me to tears. Now, I'm going to share with you, there is nothing in the world that you could give me, not one single thing in the world that you could give me that would mean more to me than that. And that is the fulfillment we seek. When we know that we've come here to do something, we've done it, and somebody else benefited from it. And I only share that long response because every single person on the planet is chasing fulfillment. We think it's a car, a house, a yacht, a helicopter, or something. We want fulfillment. And if we could just give selflessly of ourselves every day and create one change, one impact, one positive result in somebody's life, we're going to be the happiest people we've ever met. And that will be in a state of joy.
Ooh, I love it. Which actually brings me to say, anybody listening to this interview that really feels these words that Rudi's speaking are impacting you, please share it with somebody that you feel could gain as much benefit as you have today. I think always paying it forward, right? I'm actually notorious for this. I always share interviews that I love because I listen to podcasts a lot myself. And so I'm sharing the love to everybody because I'm like, this is so good. You got to listen to it, because I'm really trying to help others. Obviously, this is my purpose of my podcast, is help others become their most highest self. And I believe through, having these interviews, these conversations, this is the greatest free way of learning how we could do that in all facets of our life. And so everybody pay it forward. If this is touching your heart, I'm sure somebody that you love could be touched by it as well. So I love what you shared. I think it's so critical that the other thing I like to say is we need to schedule enjoy more. I think we schedule so much into our days, but we don't think about, and the simple things for me is getting outside and sunlight, even going for a walk for 30 minutes. I gain so much energy, vitality, and bliss just by doing that. And so if I just make sure I schedule that in my days, like after this interview, I'm actually going to go for a walk with my dog, get in sunlight, because I know that's like a way to restore me and to kick off my day powerfully. And so I just encourage you all, know what brings you joy. The simplest thing sometimes is the greatest benefit to your days. So schedule it in and just make time for it. So Rudi, thank you so much. This has been so, so valuable. Such a powerful conversation, and just everything you shared today was really tangible things we could take away and implement in our days immediately to really vastly change our life. So I just thank you so much. I want to know, where could people best find you, learn more about you, maybe hear some of your talks coming up. I will include everything, of course, in the show notes.
I am going to take that opportunity to promote me to turn around and ask your audience instead to support you. We have podcasts, and to get your podcast out, there is an algorithm and a system. And when people rate and review a podcast, it significantly alters how people receive the information. Meaning, if somebody goes on right now, rates and reviews Erica's show, more people are going to be able to discover her show. They're going to find her message. You are listening to her because you clearly love what she has to offer. You want passion. You're pursuing love. You want to have this life that you deserve to have. And she's generously giving this to you. She used a word a little earlier, and she said, this is the easiest, freest way. It's not free. It costs Erica a tremendous amount of time, a tremendous amount of money. And we have to put this information. Yeah. And so I love to remind audience members, man, go ahead right now, smash 5 stars. It is the easiest barrier to entry right now on your phone. Hit the 5-star, rate and review her show. It's the greatest gift you could give her for all of the love that she gives you guys to live your highest and your greatest potential.
Rudi, you are so absolutely kind. I so appreciate you sharing that. And thank you for everybody that does feel now inspired to do that. I so appreciate it. It's so true that, being a fellow podcaster, Rudi has his show Empowered, which of course, this will all be in the show notes to find out more information, as he didn't share it verbally, but I will make sure it's all in the show notes. But Rudi, supporting people in podcasting is really, really a generous thing to do, because as you said, even though it's free content for those that are listening, it does take a lot of time and effort to have these conversations. And, some speakers I've interviewed are, and I don't know your rate, but some speakers I've interviewed are $80,000 an hour, by the way. Just wrap your head around that. So having a conversation on podcasts where there's no cost and you're getting like really intimate conversations, trust me, that is worthy of sharing. And so I just appreciate it. So Rudi, let me ask you my final question that I ask every guest. And I'm sure you've shared a piece of this, but if you were to share a piece of wisdom, a life lesson you've learned that you just feel you need to shout out to the world, what would that piece of wisdom be and why?
I think that every single person has been perfectly prepared for who it is that they get to become. And that if you look at where you are in your life right now, whether you're winning or whether you feel like you're losing, whether you feel like you're stuck or whether you feel like you're in flow, you're exactly where you need to be for the person that you're getting to become. You're being qualified. You're being prepared in every moment of every day to become the person that you came here to be. You were created by that incredible force to be something really big and profound in the world. And if all the things that have happened to you in your life never happened, you wouldn't be qualified to step into those shoes. But because you were born, because you're here, because you're living your life, because all of those things happened, you are qualified to be you. And if you can walk into a room and know who you are, and know that there's a divinity flowing to you and through you, and that you get to make a choice to be intentional and to perfectly show up in that moment as the highest and the greatest expression of you, not only are you going to live a life of joy, of fulfillment, of freedom, giving back selflessly of yourself every day in every single way, but in addition to that, you're going to be impacting other people, not only through your actions and your behaviors, but through teaching people what does it look like to live a life of power, abundance, freedom, and joy. I want you to hear me when I say to you, I know life can be hard. I know that we've had a lot of setbacks, we've had trials, we've had tribulations, but there is a way that has prepared you, and you now are uniquely prepared. You are qualified. And if you're qualified, what do you do with that information? And when you take what has been your life and you use that to impact others around you, it diminishes the struggle and it then amplifies the joy. Take your life and live the most beautiful and profound life that you can. From my heart to yours, I want you to know I love you so very, very much. I love you with every fiber of my body and my being. And I want to see you soar. I want to see you live the highest and the greatest potential of who you came here to be. And then I want you to teach it. I want you to teach everything that you've ever learned, everything you've ever gone through. Teach it to anyone that's around you, because that's giving value and meaning to the experiences that you had.
Rudi, you just gave me chills, first of all. I feel like you're speaking right to me and you're speaking right to everybody that's listening right now. You just gave me chills. That was so, so good. You're a phenomenal speaker. I just want to, like, I already said that, but I'm just going to reiterate it again because I want you to really take that and receive that, that your words speak volumes and they're really heartfelt. And I know there's so much truth in your words that I believe they really hit the soul. And if everybody that's listening today could really take that and walk into their days knowing the truth that they are enough, they have all they need within them to live the most magnificent, joyful, fulfilling, purposeful, passionate life they wish to live with intention, most importantly. So Rudi, thank you so much for your time. I so appreciate you, and everybody go follow Rudi. I want to make sure I say your last name, Riekstins?
Riekstins, yeah, Rudi Riekstins. I always just go with Rudi because it's one of those last names that's never going to be pronounced correctly. Rudi Riekstins.
Riekstins. Okay. Thank you. Appreciate you so much. Thank you for your valuable time.